So I have a problem with the rear suspension on this 1957 Zundapp KS601 Elastic. It has a rear swing arm suspension, unique for this US only model. And the springs seem to be fine, but you get a pogo action because the dampening is bad. So I suspect there's a bad seal. So I don't want to put unoriginal materials on the bike, and I'd like to try to repair the originals. This is the left side shock that I took off. The eye-to-eye length of this shock is 12 inches, and the diameter of the bushing here in the eyes is 10 millimeters. So I have a retaining clip removing tool, this flat punch for a washer that's bent over, a 14 millimeter socket, a hammer, and a dental pick with a curve on it. It's to use as a hook. So let's see what's inside. This is the bottom of the shock, and you can see that there's a retaining ring that's quite large here, holding the cap on. Just a lot of grease there. Also, similar retaining ring on the top part of the shock that I'll remove first. To be the bottom, and the ring is out, and you can see that it's just the ring holding in this cap with the eye hole for the bottom. You can see there is an circlip on the outside. There's actually one on the inside, but that's to be removed later. I removed that outer retaining ring or circlip, and the dampener is underneath here, and you can move it down now. It's free, so that we can actually take this cover off, which is aluminum. This is the bottom. Sorry, I don't have fancy tools. So the spring on the bottom is the shorter spring. It's greasy as hell. And then there's a reversible ring. It doesn't seem to be any different one way or the other, so that's just going to separate the two springs. And we can take the longer spring out. That's towards the top, and put that aside and make a big greasy mess. So what we have left here is a dampener. There's a spring inside there, and you can see a circlip to take that apart. So we're looking down in this shock. This is the upper part. I'm going to take the upper ring off next. So this is the top cap. The retaining ring is off. We'll put that aside. You can see that there's a washer that's bent over on this 14 millimeter nut. So we'll need to take a hammer and knock that flat and take this nut off the dampener to remove the dampener unit. And I won't show that because I only have two hands and no assistance. So I loosened this nut, which is 14 millimeter, and we'll just take that off. And you can see that there's this washer, and it was bent over, so I just knocked that down. There's actually a little hole there and a little tooth on this washer that kind of places it in that position. You can see we're left with this threaded end, and you can see, I hope, that it's square on this cover. Okay, so we'll take that off, put that aside, greasy as hell. And then what we're left with here is a little washer that's special because it has a square hole, and just doesn't matter which way it goes. It's just don't lose it. And then there's this rubber bushing that comes off. It's the top now, okay? And you can tell, let's see if I can do this. Let's see. You can tell that the seal is bad on this because it just goes up and down, and there's no dampening. Okay, so we'll take this circlip out next and see what's inside. So I've taken the circlip off, and there's a bit of a special washer that you don't want to lose. It's got a little flange on it. It's greasy, but it's just something to put aside. Put it right there next to that retaining ring. And we can see that there's now a spring that comes out of the dampener. And if we push this dampening rod all the way down, you can see there's a cup, and I'll take that cup off and show it to you. And the dampener sits in, so it's metal in here, but the outside is a rubber type plastic material and a seal on this side. And it was a little hard to pull out of this tube. It created a vacuum, so maybe this strange part, which I'll never find, is okay. Square-headed dampening rod this way, see, and what we have is this 14 millimeter nut, but you can see the threads maybe have been splined over, and it doesn't want to come off because of that. And this sealing mechanism of these 3 rubber rings, I think, is what's bad and why it just slops up and down inside this dampening cylinder. I don't quite know what these strange looking alien little fittings are, but they don't slide down. At least they don't right now, and I'm afraid to break it. But you can see there's a small weep hole for fluid, and I suspect that these 3 rubber washers are what are bad, and I'll try to figure out how to take these off and find maybe a homemade replacement. I don't know. So I took the dampening rod to the machinist. They described that situation as the nut had been staked onto the piston rod, and they're going to do a little bit of work to try to undo that, so that dampening piston itself has this weird shapes, has to do with the design of how much dampening and the flow of oil through the passages. They turned me on to a hydraulic shop in town that may be able to provide me with some material to create a good seal. That's if we can get it apart. But I did some research on this. I did not know that this company, Stabilus, S-T-A-B-I-L-U-S, is a German company, and they have 80% of the automotive market for basically every make of car for shock absorbers. And this part is from 1957. Apparently the company's from the 30s, and they're located in Koblenz. I don't know if that's how you say it, but a town in Germany. And this thing's marked 1155 with a 7 on it. And there's this marking 27. It's meaningless to me. And I realized that the customer service for this company can't be blamed, but they are not very helpful. After all, this is a part from 1957. And I noticed that there is a retaining ring that I'm not able to get off. I'm hoping that this seal is okay. It has some rubber in there and a little bit of felt, because clearly the fluid, you wouldn't want to come out this end either. If I look down in there, you can see that there's, well, maybe you can't. There's an interesting little fitting, so that you have this tube made of steel with this aluminum insert and a seal here. Anyway, The piston slops around in here. So I'm hoping if I can fix that, I can put it back together and it will work correctly. We'll see.